The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has recorded 56 clashes since the beginning of the day. The Russians are making their most active attempts to break through Ukrainian defenses in the Pokrovsk direction. The enemy launched about a dozen assaults. The defense forces repelled them at the Alexandrovsky bridgehead. In our next report, we will tell you on which section of the front the Ukrainian army managed to liberate a settlement and how many eliminated soldiers and pieces of equipment are shown on the military's counter. Russian losses. Stay tuned.
The defense forces have liberated the village of Kucheryavivka in Donetsk region. The General Staff published a video showing Ukrainian paratroopers raising the blue and yellow flag on one of the destroyed buildings. The settlement was deoccupied by the Ukrainian armed forces as part of the Dobropilya operation. The paratroopers also added to Ukraine's exchange fund. Ukrainian drone operators thinned out the enemy's artillery ranks by delivering precise strikes on Russian units. In one section of the front, a Grad multiple rocket launcher system and 2 cannons were destroyed. Since the beginning of the day, there have been 56 combat engagements on the front line. According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the Russian army attempted to advance in the Alexandrovsk direction 10 times. Ukrainian defenders are also holding their positions in the Konstantinovka sector of the front, where they have repelled 5 Russian assaults since the beginning of the day. The same number of enemy attacks. The defense forces repelled attacks on the Sloviansk bridgehead in the areas of 4 settlements.
The enemy has become more active on the Zaporizhia front. However, this indicates that the Russians are trying to create another hotspot of tension to divert our attention from the Pokrovsko-Dobropolsky direction and the Predniprovsk direction. The enemy is not attacking as actively there. In the information space, they are already claiming to have crossed to the right bank, I want to tell you. Accordingly, we understand perfectly well that all of this is a Russian information psychological operation. They have no successes, no advances at all.
The situation remains most difficult in the Pokrovsky direction. According to the Ukrainian military command, since the beginning of the day, fighting of varying intensity has broken out there 20 times. The Russian army stormed the positions of the defense forces in the areas of 8 settlements.
In Pokrovsk, it is known that a sabotage group made it as far as the railway, where they were destroyed. There were also battles in Kupiansk, in the middle north, in the northwest. They managed to capture some territory. And the fighting is very heavy. In other sectors, generally speaking, well, there are some isolated successive manifestations of special operations activities, for example. As for armored vehicles, there are about 30 units in the column.
The Ukrainian Defense Forces eliminated 1,050 Russian occupiers over the past day. In total, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russia has lost more than 1,133,000 soldiers. In addition, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, 2 tanks, 11 armored combat vehicles, and 12 artillery systems were destroyed the day before. Ukrainian defenders have also taken down 160 Russian drones.
The Security Service of Ukraine has unveiled a new generation of Sea-Baby maritime drones. According to the SSU, these unmanned devices have already been tested in successful missions in the Black Sea waters. It was precisely these drones that struck the Kerch Bridge in June 2023. The upgraded Sea-Baby drones can cover distances of more than 1,500 kilometers and carry up to 2,000 kilograms of cargo. They are equipped with reinforced engines and a modern navigation system, as well as a hydro-stabilized machine gun mount, a recognition system, and auto-targeting. Some models are even capable of carrying heavy weaponry.
The next story, currently being developed and worked on by the Security Service of Ukraine, is the adaptation and modification of advanced missile weaponry systems. This important development will allow for operations to be conducted from a much longer distance, while staying safely out of the enemy's countermeasure range. Here, in this footage, we see one of these innovative platforms in action, specifically a model that is designed to carry heavy weaponry. For example, it is equipped with a 10-round Grad launcher, which is a powerful and effective artillery system.
We can use modern technologies from anywhere, even from anywhere in the world. That is, as I already mentioned, we can simply drive down the road, stop for a hot dog, and continue our mission.
Drones attacked an oil refinery in Dagestan. A facility in Makhachkala was hit, almost 2,000 kilometers from Ukraine. This information was confirmed by Freedom sources in the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine. And they noted that the targeted strike was carried out by Ukrainian-made drones. Let me remind you, according to the BBC, this year drones have hit more than half of Russia's major oil refineries, disabling about 38% of the country's refining capacity. This has also caused a fuel crisis within Russia and disrupted the logistics of the Russian army.
At least one of the drones successfully attacked and disabled a primary oil processing unit. After the explosion, a large-scale fire broke out at the plant. The impact on Russia's oil industry will continue and will only keep growing. Military intelligence will systematically drain the aggressor of the lifeblood of war. This is according to sources from Freedom in the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine.
Across Russia, repairs to the country's infrastructure are being postponed en masse. According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, the official explanation is a lack of funding. But in reality, there is only one reason. State funds are being diverted to the war against Ukraine. And even these resources are rapidly running out. Analysts note that the Russian economy has started to deteriorate even faster. Nikita Skoblikov will continue the story.
The Russian economy is deteriorating faster than expected. This is being recorded by the Bank of Finland's Institute for Emerging Economies. All key indicators are trending downward. Even the Kremlin's pessimistic forecasts are not coming true. The main reason is the focus on war. Virtually all of the country's resources are being funneled into military spending, while other sectors are simply suffocating under these conditions.
In our current forecast, it is assumed that government spending will help sustain domestic demand, particularly production in sectors related to military expenditures. Growth in other sectors of the economy will be limited by a labor shortage and tighter borrowing conditions. If there are no significant changes in Russia's domestic policy or serious external shocks, we expect Russia's GDP to grow by only 1% per year throughout the entire forecast period. From the report of the Institute for Emerging Economies of the Bank of Finland,
Finnish analysts emphasize that Russia's economy is being stifled by military spending and dependence on China. The report states that more than 40% of the state budget is spent on the war against Ukraine and so-called internal security. At the same time, revenues are growing slower than expenditures and the deficit is increasing. Moscow has only one way left to plug the gaps, raise taxes and cut spending on its own citizens.
in the Novosibirsk, Orenburg, Yaroslavl, Voronezh, and Ulyanovsk regions, as well as in Dagestan and Krasnoyarsk Krai, they have already begun planning to increase regional taxes. Specifically, in 3 regions, the vehicle tax will be raised. In the Novosibirsk region by 10.9%, in Krasnoyarsk Krai by more than 10%, and in the Orenburg region by more than 30%. From a publication by the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service on Telegram.
In addition to raising taxes, the Kremlin is also cutting financial support for its citizens and various social benefits. Analysts note that the Russian economy is currently in an extremely vulnerable position.
The reduction of various programs that previously stimulated the Russian economy, such as preferential mortgages, certain other payments, the increase in taxes, these are attempts to collect certain funds, so to speak, retroactively, after the relevant financial books had already been closed, and much, much more.
At the beginning of 2025, Russian media reported that the level of Russia's national debt had reached 13.5% and continues to grow. Experts warn that this trend is leading the country toward financial instability. Resources are not being used for development, but rather to maintain the military machine. As a result, across the Russian Federation, there is a mass repairs to infrastructure facilities, from roads and communication lines to schools and kindergartens, are being postponed en masse. According to the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service, the official reasons cited are lack of funding, delays in the delivery of materials, and equipment shortages. But in reality, everything is obvious. State funds are being redirected to continue the war against Ukraine.
In Kamchatka, the repair of the underwater internet cable has been postponed until 2026, which puts the region's residents at risk of losing high-speed connectivity. A similar situation is observed in the transportation sector. The reconstruction of one of the most accident-prone highways in the Rostov region, Novocherkassk-Kamenolomny, has been postponed until 2027. In Biysk and near Ufa, road repair plans have also been disrupted due to a lack of equipment and heavy machinery workload. In Kaluga, the reconstruction of 2 central streets was postponed due to limited funding. And in Kurgan, street repairs have been postponed indefinitely. From a publication by the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine on the agency's website.
These are problems that can be described as an introduction, or perhaps even the beginning of stagnation, primarily in the civilian sectors of the economy. It's clear why resources are being redirected to the military sector, and naturally the civilian economy is suffering as a result. This is essentially an economy where a significant large-scale reallocation of funds is taking place in favor of the military-industrial complex.
The Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service sums it up. Even though the Kremlin keeps insisting on the supposed development of the country's regions, the reality tells a different story. The state's resources have been scorched by the war. Everything that still functions is not aimed at improving people's lives, but at sustaining the military machine.
Today's strike on a kindergarten in Kharkiv shows that Russia is choosing the language of war. This was stated by European Commission spokesperson Anita Hipper at a briefing in Brussels. She emphasized that the EU's position is clear. It is to support all efforts to achieve peace.
We see that Ukraine wants peace, Europe wants peace, and the United States wants peace. And that is precisely why we welcome President Trump's initiative aimed at achieving this goal. But what we are seeing from Russia is the language of war. Just today, Putin chose children as his target. He once again targeted a kindergarten, killing innocent people. And on our part, we will continue to do what we have done since day one. Support Ukraine. Support it in every way. This was also mentioned in the statement by the Coalition of the Willing, published just a few days ago, so that we can ensure that Ukraine remains strong during, after, and before the ceasefire. On our part, this means a concrete increase in our support of military and financial resources for Ukraine. It also means working on our 19th package of sanctions.
President Volodymyr Zelensky, commenting on yet another attack, noted that Ukraine has endured another night that proves there is not enough pressure being put on Russia. And the word Russia means nothing in diplomacy until the Kremlin faces critical problems. The Ukrainian leader emphasized that sanctions, long-range capabilities, and coordinated actions from all of Kyiv's partners are needed to create serious trouble for Moscow.
It is already time to adopt a strong sanctions package from the European Union. We also count on strong sanctions measures from the United States and the G7, all those who strive for peace. It is very important that the world does not remain silent right now, and that there is a united response to the Russians' vile attacks. Everyone who is now helping Ukraine with air defense systems and missiles, to them is protecting lives. We are grateful for this, and everyone who helps Ukraine with long-range capabilities brings the end of the war closer. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
President Zelensky has begun his visit to European countries. Today he visited Norway and Sweden, where he held a series of important talks. Thus, Oslo will allocate an additional $150 million to provide Ukraine with electricity and gas during the winter. And in Sweden, it was possible to agree on closer cooperation in the development of air capabilities. Stockholm is ready to sell Ukraine up to 150 aircraft, the latest model Gripen. Yulia Agranovskaya will tell you more about Zelensky's European tour.
The allocation of $150 million by the Norwegian government for the purchase of gas for Ukraine became Norway's third energy aid package in 2025. Now the total contribution amounts to about $400 million.
Norway is providing strong support to Ukraine and will continue to do so. It is very important to maintain close dialogue with the Ukrainian authorities so that the aid meets the needs on the ground in Ukraine. During my meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, I presented Norway's plans for further assistance to Ukraine through 2026. I believe that the support will remain strong.
The partners also discussed bilateral defense cooperation. In particular, this concerns the production of drones and missiles, strengthening Ukraine's air defense, as well as expanding the Pearl Initiative. Volodymyr Zelensky noted that Russia does not intend to stop. Therefore, it is necessary to continue putting pressure on Putin through joint efforts. Let us recall that during the Ramstein format meeting, Norway announced the provision of $600 million for UAVs, electronic warfare systems, and explosives for Ukraine. In addition, Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre stated his readiness to finance the purchase of Patriots for Ukraine from the United States.
We are very grateful for the tremendous support from the Norwegian people, as well as for your personal and diplomatic involvement, which is also of great importance. Secondly, energy. I believe the people of Norway understand how important this is, how critical it is for the protection of our people. air defense systems, missiles. For these systems, all of this saves human lives. We are very grateful to you and the people of Norway for saving the lives of Ukrainians.
The visit to Norway was part of the Ukrainian president's European tour. Afterwards, Volodymyr Zelensky traveled to Sweden, where he discussed with Swedish Prime Minister Ordenberg, Ulf Kristersson, the code of the Russian Federation's war against Ukraine and bilateral cooperation in the field of defense. They visited the Swedish defense group Saab, which is the manufacturer of the Gripen fighter jet, the Global Eye reconnaissance aircraft, missile systems, anti-tank weapons for infantry and other equipment.
We signed a letter of intent between Sweden and Ukraine, and this is the beginning of a long journey. This will bring us one step closer to a major export agreement. This means great opportunities for the Ukrainian Air Force, for Sweden, and for our defense industry. Sweden is one of the best and largest military donors to Ukraine. In particular, we are helping with artillery and air defense. This agreement is not aimed at specific deliveries. At this moment, it is about long-term cooperation. We're talking about 100 to 150 Gripen Series E fighter jets, which are now beginning to be produced. This will help significantly strengthen the air forces in Ukraine. Yes, these are very impressive aircraft, powerful aviation platforms that allow for a wide range of missions. Everyone can see what threats this helps to counter. Russian strikes against our country do not stop, so our defense strategy is a multi-component defense based on many elements. From air defense systems like Patriot and NASAMS to combat aviation. Sweden is helping us a lot with this, and today we have started working on getting Gripens for Ukraine. We expect that the future contract will allow us to obtain at least 100 of these aircraft.
And on Thursday, October 23rd, President Zelensky will attend a meeting of the leaders of EU member states in Brussels. There, he will also hold talks with the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa. Let us recall that Ukraine and Europe are preparing a plan to end Russia's war against Ukraine. It consists of 12 points and provides for the gradual lifting of sanctions on the Russian Federation if it commits to a ceasefire. Another point is negotiations between Kiev and Moscow on the administration of the occupied territories. At the same time, neither Europe nor Ukraine will legally recognize the occupied Ukrainian lands as Russian. The proposal responds to recent calls by US President Donald Trump for Zelensky and Putin to freeze hostilities along the current front line before the start of peace negotiations. Yulia Granovskaya for Freedom TV channel.
The weapons for Ukraine, worth the first several $billion and funded by allies, have already been sent from the United States. This was stated by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte during a conversation with journalists in Washington. He also said that he plans to discuss with US President Donald Trump his ideas about achieving full peace in Ukraine and the steps the alliance can take to implement them. Rutte also intends to present Trump with a 12-point peace plan developed by Europe and Ukraine.
As for Ukraine, President Trump made the decision to resume supplying weapons to Ukraine, which are paid for by NATO countries. And right now we are working hard on this project. The first shipments of weapons worth a couple of $1 billion have already been delivered to Ukraine and the US and have been paid for by the allies. Of course, Europeans are also stepping up their efforts to guarantee security for Ukraine, including a long-term ceasefire or a peace agreement. And we all hope that this will happen as soon as possible.